Hi, Samuel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate you making the time.
My pleasure. So now you have written one book, a fairly interesting sounding book by the sounds of it. I've checked it out on Amazon. But before we get into your book, let's find out a little bit more about you, where you're from, and how you got to the point where you wrote this book.
I live in Mexico. I have been living there for the last 18 years, working as a missionary. Um, and writing has been a part of my life since I was about 12 years old because I started complaining about the endings of books that I was reading. And I was an avid reader. And my father would say, "Well, if you don't like the ending, why don't you rewrite it?" Because he was trying to get me to write papers for homeschool assignments, and so that kind of got me started into writing, and I've been writing short stories ever since. And just last year, I started work on this novel, which I have now self-published on Amazon.
So I saw that there's something about transhumanist. That sounds like a very interesting word. What exactly is that?
So, what I mean by transhumanism is going beyond what is human or transcending humanity. And so, there's this push in the scientific work to augment man, make him go beyond death, sickness, and some of those things are good, but to a certain extent, I think it can be taken to an extreme, to where it becomes not just helping humanity get past some of the weaknesses, but to where we can go and try to uh, go beyond what the limits that God has placed on humanity. I'm a Christian, and so I believe that when God made humanity, he made man perfect, and then he sinned and fell. And our because of the sin of Adam, all of mankind is subject to um, the consequences of sin, and we all sin. And so when we try to go beyond uh, we try to get out of sin through any other means than God's ordained plan in Jesus. That becomes problematic. It becomes a problem, and it will end up resulting in uh, problems for humanity, even those who aren't Christians, who aren't believers. It could result in tyranny and oppression, I believe.
More interesting concept. So is your book uh, have Christian elements to it?
Yes, it does. I would say it has Christian themes. Themes like good versus evil, good triumphing over evil, um, and especially light versus dark. Um, and I would say that it is not so Christian that someone who does not hold my worldview couldn't enjoy it. But if you are a Christian, you will notice um, themes, you will notice ideas taken from the Bible, and basically rewritten for the purpose of my story. I take a lot of inspiration from the Bible.
Okay. I don't say this often enough, but I'm going to do it with you. Tell me about your book.
So my book starts out with this kid living on in his village, a small village. He has a nice, comfortable life. His parents and his family's in order, um, and he he breaks one of the taboos of the city. He goes with his friend Sally to explore the surrounding woods, which are called the Woods of Doom. Um, and as he gets into the Woods of Doom, he breaks this taboo that you're not supposed to go there, that monsters dwell there, bad things will happen. And while he's there, the the enemy comes into the story. So the forces of the dark wizard Calculo um, come and attack the city and they burn it to the ground. And so while this is going on in the city, he and Sally are lost in the woods, and they get found by a wizard who takes them to um, a place called the Hall of Light, where they get taken in and accepted as members of the community, and they are going to be cared for since their village has been destroyed and their lives ruined. While there, Stout, who's my main protagonist, he receives a vision, and in his vision, he sees a wizard performing dark arts and evil surgeries that conglomerate man and human into one being. And he he is told that he needs to go stop this wizard. He needs to go defeat him. And so then from there the story is about Stout training to go on this quest, going on the quest, and at the end, I don't want to ruin the story, but achieving uh, some sort of uh, he has to win. He has to uh, defeat this wizard. He has to set the world right. So he needs to achieve some sort of fulfillment to the story, to the resolution to the problem.
Okay. Well, it sounds very fantastic. Where did you come up with this idea?
So I was I was uh, I started out writing a children's fairy tale. I really wanted it to be, um, kind of this happy-go-lucky adventure. Um, and I was thinking through uh, specifically themes of the infanticide that happens in the US through abortion clinics, and also through I was also thinking through transhumanism and these themes of what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. And as I was discussing with other people, thinking through these themes, researching, that kind of worked its way into this story and made it darker than I had planned. Um, but I think but then I went back and edited and worked it a little bit better. So it wasn't quite so dark and heavy, and would be specifically enjoyable to boys in the ages of 10 to 15. And this concept of an adventure that's very fairy tale. There's an evil wizard. There's some sort of goal he has to attain. That was kind of my plot. It was just typical fairy tale. Boy starts here, something bad happens, goes on an adventure, and defeats some sort of villain. And all the other stuff I was thinking about and researching kind of on the side really worked its way into the story. Um, so I'm much more of a discovery type writer than a uh, architect where I build out my outline. Um, I kind of discover my story as I work through it as I go along.
Okay. Interesting way of doing it. Kind of reminds me of the Chronicles of Narnia, or at least the beginnings of such a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy C.S. Lewis's works. I grew up on the Chronicles of Narnia, and when I was a little bit older, I began reading uh, the Space Trilogy, and so that was my introduction into fantasy and the fantasy world, and the fantasy genre. Um, and other than C.S. Lewis, another really good author who I have read a lot and I believe influences my writing somewhat would be J.R.R. Tolkien and his Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as The Hobbit.
Mhm. And those two fellows were friends with each other, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
They come
yes,
from the
I do believe.
same background or similar background. So, when did you publish this book?
I published it in late June of this year.
2023.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what are sales like?
Sales are not so great. So in the self-published world, you have to do your own promoting, and I hear that that is also similar in the traditional publishing world. Um, so I have I've reached out to all my friends, all my family. Um, I recently went on a trip to the U.S. to visit friends and family, and while I was there, I made certain I had copies of my book, and I told everyone I talked to about my book, and I showed them a copy. And honestly, I had better sales pitching it in person, like, here, I have a copy. Would you like to buy it? And telling them about the story. Um, that worked better than what I've been doing since then, which is trying to get on shows, talk about my book, get people to go to my personal website, get people to go to Amazon. Um, but I think that once I get a little more traction, get some more appearances, um, that I will potentially drive larger sales.
Mhm.
Um, I I want to make a living off this. I have lots more books in mind. I have lots of outlines, like one-page outlines written. This is the story idea. And I am currently working on the second book in what is going to be a series. So this book I've written is just the first book, um, and the second one is, I think I'm on chapter 7. So I'm I'm working my way through it, and I hope to have it out next year.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, being a Christian, would you say that you have like a built-in audience if in churches, church libraries, especially in the United States? I don't know what it's like where you are, but there's a lot of Christians in the States that would like to have a book like this for their boys, young boys, if it has, the wholesome
So
messages that you say it contains.
yes, so to a certain extent, yes. I would have uh, our audience for my Christian fantasy, except for the fact that I include magic. Um, in the Christian world, there is a somewhat of a aversion to magic, um, especially magic when it is explicitly said as magic. There are Christians who will not read the Chronicles of Narnia to their children because it contains magic, which I find really odd, because the world we live in is very magical. If you think about it, not in terms of science, but like how it would appear to a child or someone from a couple thousand years ago, this world that we live in today is very magical. I mean, I'm talking to you, and you are not across the room from me. You are miles away, and you can hear me and you can see me. That's kind of magical. I mean, we think about it in terms of science, we're using the internet, we're using cameras, we're using microphones, but it's pretty magical. And when you think about cars, I mean, we get in this machine, we turn a key, and it starts up, and we can drive away in this horseless chariot. And it's very, very magical. Um, and you can get into all kinds of other things. I mean, rain is kind of magical. I mean, we don't really think about it, but the sun warms the water, it evaporates, it condenses in the sky because it cools off, and then it comes back down as rain. And we're like, this is normal. But if you kind of think about it, it's a little bit amazing. It's a little bit like, why doesn't it just keep going, right? Well, why does it condense? It's it's pretty cool.
Yes.
And so I think magic is, it can be worked into a story in a Christian manner. And in fact, the Bible discusses magic numerous times. You have mentions of mediums and spirituses. Um, you have people calling up the dead, and it actually working, like it not being fake. So I think Christians tend to forget those kind of things, and they want to avoid anything that's magical because Christians are told that they should not practice witchcraft. And so, you know,
Well,
I
it doesn't
I feel
sound to
like I
me
sh
that you're promoting any kind of witchcraft magic. You're sort of redefining the word magic with rain. And I was thinking about fire, starting a fire by rubbing sticks together.
yeah,
That's kind of magical. But if you
that is.
redefine the word magic to mean what you want it to mean, then it's no different than some of the stories in the Bible, the
Yeah,
miracles. Some people think
yeah,
miracles are magical, but they're not. They're miracles. God can do anything. So why
exactly.
can't you describe a story where your characters can do all kinds of things, as long as the message is wholesome, right?
Yes. And one of the things I go into is a, a, a thing of authority, spheres of authority. And I think magic has to do with a lot to do with authority because what witchcraft is mostly one of the central things of it is to go outside of one's sphere of authority to try to force nature to do what you want it to do or force uh, other people to do what you want them to do. It kind of falls into that people used magic and very mystical things to try to manipulate weather in the past. And but we also have, for example, in the Bible, you have prophets manipulating weather, but they're not forcing weather because God gave them the authority to do those things. Moses splitting the Red Sea in two, which I'm sure is a pretty famous one that you've heard of, is, that's very miraculous. I mean, it's pretty magical. He sticks a staff out over the sea and it splits clean open, and stays open until he wants it to close. And
And they walk across on
why was he
dry
able to do that?
land.
Because
That's
God
that's
gave
the
him the
part that really
authority to
gets
do
me.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It wasn't muddy for them until the Egyptians came along, and then it was muddy.
Yeah. I live near the ocean
And
and I see the tide go
yeah,
out. You don't want to walk on that stuff. You'll sink up to your thighs. Yeah.
yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, well, you say you're in a mission field or you grew up in a mission field. Can you elaborate on that? Where are you originally from if you're in Mexico now?
So I am originally from the U.S. I was born there, and when I was 5 years old, my parents moved to Mexico, and we live in the uh, Copper Canyon, the mountains of uh, northern Mexico. It's called the Sierra Tarahumara, specifically in a region known as the Copper Canyon. It's very actually big tourist attraction. Um, we're kind of out of the touristy area, but we're still on the main road, and we see them go by a lot. Um, but we are working with a Native American people group known as the Tarahumara Indians to help with their felt needs of malnutrition and high child mortality rates. So my father is a farmer. He came to the mountains to help teach better agriculture techniques, um, so that they can grow more food and feed their families. So that's what I'm doing here in Mexico. And in that world, I'm also writing,
Yeah.
because it's just one of my giftings, and I can't live without writing.
And you have the support of your family for that.
Yes, I do. My father uh gives me time. He sees I'm writing, he sees I'm working on a story. He says, um, I might need your help in an hour. So he gives me time to do that, which has been very helpful. He proofreads everything I write, and there have been times in the past where I said, "Hey, I think I want to publish this. This feels good to me," and he says, "No, no, this isn't worth publishing." I handed him my first draft of this book that I just published, and he said, "You know what? With a little bit of work, I think that's worth publishing." I hadn't even told him I was thinking of publishing it. I had written it for a assignment for a writing class that I was taking online, and I thought, oh, well, okay,
Mm.
I'm going to work on this. And so a year later, I published it, and you know, had to learn all the figure out and solve all the problems of
Yep.
self-publishing, finding a cover artist, proofreader, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So you did pay for proofreading. Did you pay for editing as well?
I did not pay for editing. Maybe I should have,
Well,
but I had a low budget,
yeah.
and proofreading and the cover ate pretty good into my budget.
Yeah.
Uh,
It can,
so
it can get
so I
expensive.
did not.
Yeah. That's okay. So between you and your father, you basically edited it and went back and forth until it was
Yeah,
formatted just the way you want.
yeah. I learned how to do the formatting myself, um, and that was a little bit interesting. But once I got it figured out, um, yeah,
Yeah.
I think the book looks great. I've had people tell me that they enjoyed reading it. It wasn't hard to read, so I think the formatting worked.
Okay. And you say you're into about a third of the way through your second book, and this is going to be a series. How many books do you plan on writing in this series?
So I think it's going to be three. Um, I have another book idea that fits pretty well with the story, and then there's another book that I have an idea for, almost like you know how when you have some authors will have two series, and there'll be like a book that uh, kind of ties the two series together. It's going to be kind of a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk.
Okay. All right.
It's interesting.
Cool. Right.
Yeah.
So you're really enjoying yourself then.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Writing books is just it's what I do when I want to relax. It's when I do when I want to have fun. So it doesn't even really feel like work to me.
Hmm.
So it's very enjoyable because I get to spend, a whole bunch of time talking about my book,
Yeah,
which, I mean, what could be more exciting than that?
sure. I like your background there with all those books on the shelves there.
Yeah.
You're definitely a reader.
Yes, some of that is my father's library. I still live with him and my mother. Um, while I am studying to get my master's degree, I'm doing a distance learning program. So that really helps. That really helps me as a artist who's not making very much money, because I help my dad out on the farm, and that covers my living expenses, um, which gives me the freedom to write.
Good.
So
Good for you.
yeah.
Good for you. Any final thoughts that you want to impart to the audience about where they can buy this book, a little bit more information on your website, anything else that you want to say?
You can find my book on Amazon, and I have both a print copy and an ebook copy. The ebook is $4.99, and the print copy is $15 if you're interested. Um, and my website is samuelbornman.com. That's Samuel, Samuel, Bornman, Bornman.com. If you go there, you can find a link directly to the Amazon sales page. You can also sign up for my newsletter, which will let you know when my next book comes out. And if you sign up to my newsletter, you'll receive a free short story that is, I think, a lot of fun and well worth reading. Uh, so go over there and check that out.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Samuel, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I wish you all the success.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. You take care now.
Bye bye.
Thank you for watching. And before you go, if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. You can even leave a comment. All of that really helps in recommending this channel to a larger audience. And if you are an author, I would love to speak with you about your book. Until next time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.